It's time to open up the legal file, check in with our legal counsel. You know he is Joe DiGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Fred.
I've got a couple of things I wanted to get to that are left over from last week, but I cannot resist the opportunity in light of what's going on in Egypt. We have talked to you a time or two about Sharia law in the United States and whether or not that is part of a covert agenda under stealth jihad. But I have to ask you now, Tunisia and Egypt were two of those countries that were essentially secular republics, which means that Sharia law did really not exist. As a matter of fact, in Tunisia, the covering was banned. Abortion was allowed. Women could divorce their husbands. I don't know how lenient Egypt was, but how would you expect that to change now that their governments are in turmoil? And what would that say to the attempt to move Sharia law into this country as well?
Well, this is a very important opportunity for the proponents of Sharia law in both of those countries who have been in the shadows purposely by virtue of laws in those countries, Egypt and Tunisia. It's a very dangerous time, and it really means that it is a possibility for people like the Muslim Brotherhood to become legitimized in the political process. And that's why what Ambassador Bolton was telling you earlier is so important. I mean, this is where having boots on the ground and spooks on the ground, which we do, by the way, in both countries, our intelligence coming out of Tunisia and Egypt is superb, or at least it should be. And so the question will become for them, how good is the intelligence they're getting, and what can we do to prevent or help the governments that are there prevent Sharia and the people who believe in it from taking over those countries. This is going to be a tough nut, a really tough nut. And so for us, we got to keep our eyes and ears open. And if there has been an intelligence failure in both of those countries, what did the president know ahead of time? What was he told by the agency? There's going to be an amazing post-mortem on Capitol Hill, Fred, which you would be perfect to analyze.
Well, let me ask you about another piece of this, and this is just something I've uncovered recently, but apparently really since 2001, since 9/11, the Organization of Islamic Conference, those 57 nations that make up that organization, have introduced a non-binding resolution to the UN calling for freedom of expression, now get this, to be defined by Islamic law, which means that Sharia law or Islamophobia would be slander, which means that if you speak out against any kind of Islam, whether it's wearing a veil or perhaps questioning the authority of a patriarch, the punishment is death. Now, that's been a non-binding resolution for 11 years in the UN. But I'm just wondering if with these events, the UN all of a sudden becomes more inimical to U.S. and Western interests as well.
I can assure you that the United Nations will tilt toward that resolution in a New York minute. The UN is so corrupt at the bottom line of its membership and the size of the General Assembly and what the General Assembly believes. Forget the Security Council, because that is what it is. But you're absolutely right. This is a very real danger, that this will be another opportunity to legitimize the illegitimate Sharia law that wants to exist everywhere. I mean, this is part of the idea of establishing the caliphate. This is a perfect opportunity for those who believe that Sharia law should be the only law. There will be no freedom in these so-called democracies with regard to religion if the Sharia law people take over. There is no other religion except Islam in those countries if that predominates. There will not be the kind of Western liberal democracy that we think of as in the United States and Europe.
Well, then, taken to an absurd and grisly extreme, that means there is now justification legally for killing Christians and Jews.
That is not only justification, it is required by Islam. Islam requires that people who do not convert to Islam or participate in the religion be killed. Now, will that happen in Tunisia and Egypt? That's why it's so important that we not move quickly here and we try to establish stability. And as I said, we have boots and spooks on the ground. They better be doing their job.